Good evening. Welcome to the January 9th, 2024 meeting of the Millis School Committee. I will start for attendance tonight. We have Denise Gibbons is here.
Here.
Superintendent, myself, Mark Conroy, and Sean Powers.
Here.
All right. Next, I'll announce this meeting is being recorded and can be viewed on Mondays at 7 o'clock on Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 37. All meeting videos are also posted to the Millis Public Schools website under School Committee. All videos are also available on YouTube. All school committee minutes and agendas can be found on the school committee page of the Millis Public School website. We don't have anybody signed in for open session. No student reps tonight, no teacher reps tonight, so we'll go right to action items. Consideration to approve the December 12th meeting minutes.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Gibbons.
I make a motion to approve the December 12th meeting minutes.
Second. Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have consideration to approve the food service contract for fiscal 2024 to 2026. This is the contract we've reviewed in executive session, has been approved and agreed to by the school committee and the bargaining unit.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Gibbons.
I make a motion to approve the food service contract for fiscal years 24 through 26.
Second. Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Terry, I told Bob we just need Robin to sign it.
It's secretary.
Yep. All right, next we have time and learning. Student support services, annual goals, and presentation.
Good evening.
How are you?
Hello.
Thank you guys for having me. It's good to be up here to talk to you guys about this. So starting at the beginning of this school year, we had 3 goals that we really wanted to focus on for the Office of Student Support. And they all really focus around this concept of all of us are smarter than one of us, right? So it's an all-encompassing sort of concept that takes into consideration that we're all very smart people, but when we put all of that intelligence together, it probably works better for kids. So when you look at the first goal, what it talks about, and this is really an initiative that all the administrators are doing, is it talks about all of the administrators going around and doing paired walkthroughs and going into classrooms, random classrooms, and looking at what the teachers are doing, looking at their teaching practices, and really seeing it from not only our own lens, but the lens of somebody else. This has been very meaningful for all of us, I will say. And what it does is it really ensures a rigorous practice for the teachers, and it really allows us to see a different view outside of our skill set. So an example I'm going to give you is I have not had the opportunity to do my paired walkthrough with Ryan Kameri yet, our tech director. But that's the one I'm looking forward to the most, because the angle that he comes at all of this with is very different from the way I think. And to incorporate all of the facets of technology into student support at this point is a really big deal. So, it's those types of things that are making a difference for kids. So that's the first one. The second one is to promote collaborative practices between general education teachers, special education teachers, and related service providers to improve co-teaching models. We had a situation in June where we were blessed to have this woman by the name of Lisa Deeker, and she's a real guru in co-teaching. She came, she did a 2-day professional development series with some of our special education teachers, and I saw them so excited about co-teaching and working with their general education peers. And from that, what we did was Maureen Knowlton and I have been working on a grant, which I am going to give Maureen complete credit for writing. But we've been working together on this, and basically what it's looking like is a continuum of professional development for our teachers at CFB. There are two committees that are coming out of this grant. Okay, the first is a leadership committee, which is comprised of special education teachers at CFB, Maureen, Tana Django, Laura Nasuti, and myself. And then we have another committee coming out of the grant, and that is special education teachers and general education teachers that are pairing and working on a lot of the collaborative practices that are coming from Lisa Deeker. So she is going to be working with us on a monthly basis, and it's giving us the opportunity to assist the kids and assist the teachers in these types of models. The importance of these types of models is really having all the kids involved within inclusive classrooms if possible. It improves their engagement, it improves their social skills, it improves their confidence. It's research proves that it improves their academic performance all the way around, because what happens is they're getting, again, all of us are smarter than one of us, they're getting both of these academic minds working as one. So we're going to keep going with that and promoting that model over really the next 2 to 3 years. At that point, we're hoping it just takes off, on its own. And then the last goal, this was very loosely developed last year. So just to give a little history, the goal is around a social emotional program at the high school level. We had developed something like this about 3 years ago for the middle school, and saw that we required a continuum of those services for the high school students. We moved forward, we created, again, sort of a skeleton sort of program, and then really hit the ground running. I want to give Allie Sears, who's the teacher for that program, a lot of credit. She has always focused a lot on intensive special needs, and she took so much time and effort to really learn what it takes for kids with social and emotional needs to be successful within a school. So with the combination of her, our BCBA Jen Lutton, our school adjustment counselors Erin Sullivan, Jocelyn Blessing, and Liv Zatoli, we've come up with a really good program for the kids. And again, it's that continuum for the kids, now CFB, up through 12th grade. So it's working well. We're going to continue our data collection to make sure that the program is going well. And it's the type of program that we will continue to have to tweak because kids change every year. So those are the goals for the Office of Student Support. Are there any questions, concerns, anything you'd like to discuss?
Yeah.
Good way to.
What are when you go to the teams for the goals, from that grant?
Yep.
What are your hopes for what really comes out of those?
For the students or for the model?
Both.
Both. For the students, going back to what I was talking about, the ultimate goal in special education is for all of the kids to be included in inclusive classrooms. There are some kids, through data collection, we will see, and through the needs within their disability, they're not going to be immersed within inclusion all the time, and that's okay. But in order to have a model that really focuses on inclusion, having a co-teaching model is really what the ultimate goal is, right? Because you have your special education teacher as well as your general education teacher in one spot, not focusing on this idea of pulling kids out into a separate room, okay? In order to do this completely effectively, you do require a teacher at each level, okay? Right now, what we are working on is we're working within our capacity. So when we have the opportunity to have teachers that have an opportunity within a period of the day or like that, where they can focus on co-teaching, they can. That's not all day. You know, so the ultimate goal, that is the ultimate goal. It's something that we have at the middle school. It's something that is allowing for a co-teaching model. You know, but at CFB right now, again, I think all good things like this take time. 3 to 5 years, they say, for a good co-teaching model. So it's a combination of, you know, professional development, coaching, administrators going in and really assisting the staff to build and understand what things need to look like. And then making sure that we have data to support that the kids are successful within it. So what's that data? That data is their own personal, you know, their personal accomplishments with their goals, their personal accomplishments within the grade level curriculum, and really their ability to be in inclusion without having to be pulled out. So that can take, you know, 1 year to 2 years to really assess that for a student. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So then the only other thing is, because we're going into budget season and
Sure.
you're more attuned than most at having conversations with us about
Yeah.
cost and impact and budgets.
Sure.
But as we go through this, you know, and again, we see information, don't self-edit on what we really need and what we should have in order to be providing the services that we should be providing, need to provide.
Understood.
And again, I say this to every administrator that comes in, all 3 schools, when they come and do their school improvement plan. We know we're not going to be able to get everything, but we also need to know what we need, because in the event we have to prioritize things, we have to know what to prioritize.
Of course.
So
course.
that's my
That's
don't self-edit
appreciated.
speech.
Thank you.
So, all right.
I'd like to just thank Neely and her department for all the hard work they do, and also with that co-teaching grant, it's impacting really the whole district, although the bulk of it's Clyde Brown. Because of Neely's connection with Lisa Dika, we had a professional development day with Lisa Dika with all our staff, and it was extremely well received, to the point where people were stopping me in the hallway saying, we need to have her back again. And Sean, you probably know, to have someone come from the outside and have that kind of reaction
It is
from
not-
staff is impressive.
Yep, absolutely.
It's kind of cool when people listen to somebody for, what was it, 2 hours?
Yeah.
About 2.5 hours, and then come to you and say, I saw so much within that, or learned so much within that, that makes me want to change things that I'm doing. And for people to acknowledge that sort of thing is sort of rare. She does bring things out in people. I don't know if you've heard of her.
I haven't, no.
She's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we're going to keep going with our work with her, no doubt. So. All right.
All right.
Great.
Great.
Any other questions?
That's it.
Nope.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. All right, next, MSBA update. I don't know if we have any major changes. No, there's a meeting tomorrow.
The kickoff, we have the
Yeah, working group meeting tomorrow.
working group meeting tomorrow, we have the kickoff
Next week,
next week.
24th.
The designer,
All right.
things are moving.
All right. FY '24 budget update. I don't think we have anything for '24,
I think for some future agendas, though, we'll add a third thing in there. We'll probably add FY '25.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that probably,
That's
I think that FY '24 is a carryover, and
Right.
probably about time to change the year, change the budget cycle.
Start the fun all over again.
Yep. I did attend the Finance Committee meeting last week to give a very high-level expectation, which was, based on history and everything we know, we're probably sitting at about the same spot we were last year in terms of a shortfall and assuming 4%, revenue growth through the town. Again, that's all we know right now. I did tell them that, and obviously we would have to decide it, but I did indicate to them that it was highly likely that whatever our shortfall was, that we would go to the select board and ask that to be put on an override. And, part of that was, and I did reiterate to them that amount would be the shortfall for whatever we're shortfall for fiscal '25. That we wouldn't be looking to restore cuts from last year, nor would we be looking to add anything new. This was just a level service approach. And, there was some pushback, reluctance, obviously, just in terms of the whole idea of an override. One thing I didn't say then, I'll say when we have it at the tri-board meeting, but part of an override is to provide the residents a choice on losing services or increasing taxes. And my personal feeling is that there comes a point in time when the impact is too large for the 5 people on this committee, or the 3 people on the select board, or the 9 people on the finance committee, or all 20 of us to make the determination that the town should just go without. There's a threshold. It's not a hard, fast threshold, but for me, $900,000 is in that ballpark of the impact. And again, the town is going to have things that they potentially lose out onto to marijuana impact funds. There just reaches a point where I think it's imperative on elected officials and appointed officials of town to give the residents an option. And whatever the town decides, but Prop 2.5, one doesn't grow fast enough, which is fine. In fact, Craig Schultz has gone back. We haven't passed a operational override. There was one to add firefighters back in 2009. But Millis has not passed an operational override in 18 years. And it's only asked for one in 2011, and that failed. The idea that we've stayed within Prop 2.5 for 18 years is an astounding feat, truly. We've had ebbs and flows there. It's not like every year that there's never been reductions or anything like that. There have been. But in the grand scheme of things, the fact that the town of Millis has done that is amazing. When you have towns that, go for them every couple of years, which truly, Prop 2.5, you should probably need an override every 3 to 4 years. It's just the way inflation works compared to 2.5%, 3% increases in revenue. So that, we'll see how it goes throughout the spring. We're probably looking at a tri-board meeting sometime in February. It looks like it may get pushed till the end of February. Possibly the 27th, because that will allow revenue projections to come in, not only from the state, but also to get some town revenue projections, specifically around new growth. So, as one person at the Finance Committee mentioned last week, because the conversation also dovetailed around, basically, what's the right number, and should there be, reductions, what should, how many different types of budgets should be proposed. And one person mentioned, it's tough to say, because if you don't know what the revenue is, we don't know what the shortfall is, really. So, so that'll allow that. I'm also now on the other side with the 9C cuts that came out that the governor announced yesterday. So they weren't operational cuts, they were mostly earmarks, but I did find out today that Millis had the funding for the feasibility study of a senior center has been cut, and the purchase of a Council on Aging van was cut. So those two earmarks that were cut yesterday in the governor's cut list. Personally, I have concerns that this is the first series and what state funding will look like. I mean, it's never better than even, but my concern is if they start bringing it down because they're not generating the revenue that they thought they were going to. So again, by the end of February, we'll have at least the governor's proposed budget for next year, so we'll have one data point. But yeah, that's kind of now looming out there. And again, there's nothing we can do about it. But there's been no indication that their underestimating of revenue is bouncing back. So of the, I think, $1 billion that they were short, she cut like 400,000 in 9C cuts, and 600,000 or 700,000 was one-time money, reserve fund basically to plug the hole. So you're a few months into the year, you're $1 billion down, and you've already tapped 700,000 one-time money. You're not going in the right direction. So we'll see how that goes for the rest of this year, and then again, what does that mean as we get through the spring and what that means for the town. So good news all around. That's fiscal 25.
Yeah.
What we got next? Next we got, all right, so modification of tech reserve.
Yeah. So the Tech Board of Directors has approved an increase in modification to its capital reserve fund. And so notice of this, the approval by the Board of Directors has to be provided to the school committee in each member district. This is one of those strange things where a school committee vote is not needed to approve, but if you disapprove, you can vote to disapprove it. Basically, what Tech is looking to do is raise the reserve limit from $7,500,000 to $3.5 million. This does not add any cost to the district. This is surplus funds and things of that nature. It doesn't cost the districts anything, but increasing that fund and modifying the terms of its use would allow them to renovate some spaces that they already have. There's one space that Tech leases from Walpole Public Schools that they won't be able to lease, so they're going to move to the middle school that's closing in Walpole, and so they'd have to do some renovations and things like that. And their main offices and campus on Mansion Drive in Walpole, there have been some preliminary discussions with the landlord about potentially purchasing that space. So an increase in the reserve fund would give them some flexibility in that. And then also because Tech and all collaboratives are revenue generated, it provides a cushion if they have a year where their enrollment is not what they budget for. And we've seen that happen.
So is it really just adjusting how they categorize the funds that they have so that they can
Right.
use it, right? Okay.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
makes sense.
And, you know, the change has to also, the actual language of the change has to be approved by the state as part of the collaborative agreement. So again, it's one of those ones where you don't have to vote to approve it, but if you choose to disapprove, you
Speak
can
now,
do that.
speak now or forever hold your peace.
Right.
All right. Does anybody have any concerns? Okay. We're all set. All right.
And then I have the school enrollment for January. We have Clyde Brown is at 600 students. The middle school is at 270. High school is at 316. Ties is at 6, and we have 18 out-of-district students. So that's a total of 1,210 Millis students.
All right.
And then we have a few slides on the attendance. Just that's kind of to put this in context a little bit. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is providing a renewed emphasis on attendance in the wake of the pandemic. And last week, there was a joint letter that went out from districts and the Commissioner of Education on attendance. And there's some pretty stark numbers in there in terms of students missing school. And honestly, a lot of what's happening is, you know, legitimate absences based on different things. But, you know, the numbers are high, and we want to acknowledge that and see where we can improve things and get more kids into school more regularly. So just for the definition, the DESE definition of present is a student being at school or at a school-related activity or receiving academic instruction for at least half the school day. That means you're present for the day. So that receiving academic instruction, that can apply to a student who may be out of school for whatever reason. But if they're getting tutoring, things like that, that would be counted as present. The big statistic that the state is looking at is chronic absenteeism, and chronic absenteeism is being absent at least 10% of the days enrolled. So in a 180-day school year, that's 18 days of absences. That's a lot of absences. Obviously, during COVID, the number of students who were chronically absent increased significantly, and part of that was because of the requirements when someone contracted COVID. And we still have that, you know, if a student gets COVID, or a staff member or anyone, they're out for 5 days, and if they get it on a Sunday, they're out a whole week of school, and that can add up. So here's our data from last year, 22-23. Our attendance rate was 93.6. Average number of absences among students was 11.2. 43.5% of our students were absent 10 or more days. And then the chronically absent category is 15.4. And I should point out that when the state calculates chronic absenteeism, it is regardless of the reason. So you could have a kid that has a significant medical injury out for any number of days, they're still counted as chronically absent. It's not students who are skipping school for 10% of the time. So there are certainly some legitimate reasons for students to be out that long. We want to focus on those reasons that don't meet that criteria. And then this is something that they started during COVID, is 20% plus absenteeism, and we had a number of students at that level. Unexcused 9 or more times, that data is to me, it's kind of irrelevant because schools keep track and districts keep track of excused and unexcused in different ways. So in Millis, again, as a small district, we feel like we know the families. In Millis, if your student's sick at home and you know they're sick, they threw up before school, you call, that absence would be excused. In some districts, they require a doctor's note. And we just feel it's not necessary for you to take your kid to the doctor and get a note when you know they're sick. So our method of calculating unexcused is probably different from a number of districts. Also, as a small school, if someone were racking up, 9, 10 truancies, we pick up on that a lot sooner before they get to 9 or 10. You can see we're doing slightly better than the state average in those categories, but if you look at the TVL and our DOT schools, our comparison schools, we're kind of on the other side of the average, so it's something we want to work on. See if we can bring these numbers down. And just for kind of context, the chronic absenteeism rates before COVID, 18-19, we were at 5.2, and again last year we were at 15.4, so a dramatic increase. The absentee rates for 19, 20, 2021, it's really not comparable data because of the shortened year and modified schedules and so forth. 18-19, the state was at 12.9, and last year 22.7. So historically, we're usually about half of the rate of the state when it comes to chronic absenteeism. Last year, we were about 70% of the rate. So again, numbers we'd like to keep an eye on. At the various schools, we can see the jumps and from pre-COVID to last year. And as part of the state's focus on absenteeism, they've identified certain schools as attendance priority schools. Those are schools where the chronic absenteeism rate was higher than the 2018-19 state average for that grade span. So in other words, if we go back, if we look at the high school, had a 15.8% chronic absenteeism rate in 22-23. The rate of absenteeism, chronic absenteeism in 18-19 for the grade 9 to 12 grade span was actually higher than 15.8. So that schools that were at a rate that was higher than the pre-COVID rate for their grade span, they're identified as attendance priority schools. So for our schools, both Clyde Brown and the middle school, their rates of chronic absenteeism last year exceeded what the average rate was in 18-19 for their grade span. So they are identified as attendance priority schools, along with more than 75% of the schools in the Commonwealth are attendance priority schools. So what does this mean? Well, tough to say. The state has indicated that there will be some grants, some funding available to address some of the issues leading to this. I don't have all the details on that yet. So what do? We continue to monitor attendance at all 3 of our schools. Attendance priority schools should implement procedures to address chronic absences. We've already done that, and I'll talk about some of the things we already do in a minute. Work with parents of students with absenteeism concerns. We do this. Ensure school is welcoming and engaging for all students. Again, these are things we do if we can do them better to help attendance, we'll certainly focus on that. And again, we may receive something from the state to help us address these attendance issues. And another element that the DESE is considering is proposing to increase the weight of chronic absenteeism in the calculation of a school's report card. So right now, every district, every school gets an annual report card from the state, and these are the things that go into that report card: the achievement on MCAS, student growth percentiles from MCAS, high school completion, graduation rate, dropout rate, things like that, progress of our EL students towards English language proficiency, chronic absenteeism, and then advanced coursework, AP coursework. Certain courses are considered advanced coursework. So all those are calculated, and a rating is developed for each school. So what they're talking about is potentially increasing the weight of chronic absenteeism. And just a little more on accountability. Maureen spoke about this a little bit when she did her presentation back in November. So you put these elements into a formula and you come up with a rating somewhere along this continuum that the DESE has developed. Our district, as Maureen mentioned, is categorized as substantial progress towards targets. And the important thing with all of this is not requiring assistance or intervention. So if chronic absenteeism gets greater weighting in their formula, that could impact schools' ratings, districts' ratings. But we don't have verification of what they're going to do, how much it's going to be. So we're kind of waiting and seeing on that. So as of the Friday before December break, these were our current rates of attendance. And you see that our attendance rates right now seem a little better than they were last year. And just judging from kind of the flow of the school year, there's a lot of kids and staff out sick now. There's a lot going around. There was a lot going around right before December break. And then what tends to happen is after February vacation, buildings kind of get cleaned out. And so I would guess that we'd see those numbers drop a little bit. I don't see them dropping into pre-COVID levels this year, but I think we're trending in the right direction. And just to give some perspective, when you figure out the average number of absences, you might have someone who has 50 absences in the first 100 days, and that impacts the overall average for the school or the district.
Especially the size of school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One kid is, a large part of a percentage point. So, looking at the median averages at all three schools, the median averages of absences up until the 22nd was 3. And the most constantly occurring number of absences in the whole range of absences we have at Clyde Brown School, we had 9. The most common number of absences is 0. 99 kids were at 0. Middle schools at 43 kids had 3, and at the high school, 59 kids were at 0 absences. So it makes a little more like it kind of gets rid of those outliers on the high end. And so what do we do? What do we do to address this right now, and what will we continue to do? We collect regular data on student attendance, and when a student is out for 10%, general school teams review that. Oftentimes the nurse is involved because they can say, well, this particular student was out for this, this, and this. So, get the reasoning behind it. And then if there isn't, a medical reason or, behavioral health reason, and it's something that, we think needs to be addressed with the family, the counseling staff may be brought in. We've worked with, when discipline's necessary for truancies, things like that. We do that. We work with the school resource officer, the town social worker, the Millis police at times to help address, kids who are absent and should be in school. The high school has a policy where excessive absences can lead to loss of credit. So it has, at the high school level, it has more impact. And, when it's appropriate, we work with the families and with the courts. Sometimes we file child requiring assistance with the courts. And oftentimes we do that with the family as a kind of a united front to, get the student back on track. So, and just my last thing on attendance, and I've said this many times as high school principal, before when I was high school principal, we never had a kid in Millis, in the 17 years I've been here, we've never had a kid that did not graduate because of MCAS. Everyone makes it through MCAS. We have had kids who didn't graduate because of attendance. So that's, the important message. You show up, you'll be fine here.
Thanks, Bob.
Oh, thank you.
One thing I did have a parent say to me last week after these emails came out that they are, part of the reason is they are more prone and have this year kept their students home when they're sick as opposed to pre-COVID when you sent your kids to school.
Yeah. And that was
Load them up and send them in and hope they make it till 2:45.
yeah.
Right.
But that was a really paradigm
that,
shift for me.
that concept of like how what you keep your kids home for, and even in adults at work too. Like, what do you stay home for that you wouldn't have stayed home for 4 years ago?
Sure.
So it does speak. So that underline that whole behavior piece. I don't think you're going to get back to pre-COVID numbers, and truthfully, if that's the goal that the state's going to put out, I'm not sure it's achievable.
Right, and I what they do with this kind of remains to be seen.
Yeah.
Just focusing on it and really just looking at the numbers and kind of digging into it. But it's certainly a paradigm shift. I was the same way as a principal. Get to school. You guys never get to school. But now it's a different world, and we see people get sick and things get passed around, and so we just want to make sure that the kids that can be in school should be in school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We don't have any correspondence or announcements, old or new business. We do have executive session. So I will take a motion to go to executive session.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Gibbons.
I make a motion to exit open session and go to executive session for the purposes of contract negotiations for union and non-union personnel, not to return to open session.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. It's a roll call vote. Sean? Aye. I'm an aye. Denise?
Aye.
All right. Great. Thank you all very much. We will be next on camera here on January 23rd. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.